everyone, and welcome to my channel as Stories. Today, I will be telling you a very interesting story. It is about Count Dracula. We all know him as the vampire that sucks people's blood. But do we all know the full story? For a better experience, put your phone away, wear your AirPods, and dive into your imagination with me. You can also do any boring activity that you've been procrastinating on while listening to me. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 1: A Transylvanian Castle. Driving through the Transylvanian mountains, Jonathan Harker looked out the window. He could see behind him small, green hills with beautiful colors from fruit trees. It changed suddenly to dark, thick forest. People inside the carriage seemed nervous. The woman across from him looked at him and smiled as the carriage stopped. She put a small silver cross in his hand and said, "Put this on your neck. It will protect you." Jonathan got out of the carriage and watched it drive away. He looked around and saw another bigger carriage coming towards him through the trees. He handed the driver his bag and got inside. Looking through the window as he rode through the dark forest, he saw eyes, red eyes of wolves, and they seemed to be following the carriage. It took many hours before they arrived at the large black castle, and it had begun to snow. The hour was late. The driver left him in front of the door, and Jonathan was worried that everyone was asleep. What if no one hears him and he is outside all night, he thought. Just as he went to knock, the door began to open, and a tall man dressed in black clothing stood there. "Come in, Mr. Harker," he said, smiling. "I have been waiting for you. I am Count Dracula. I will carry your bags. My servants are all asleep. Please come in out of the cold." "Thank you, Count Dracula," Jonathan said. He followed the Count upstairs into a large dining room warmed by a big fire. A hot meal was on the table for him. "Sorry, but I didn't know exactly when you would arrive, so I ate without you," the Count said. When he finished eating, they sat talking for a while. "I have heard good things about you from the law company, Mr. Harker," he began. "I am happy you are here to help me and give me the chance to practice my English." He continued to talk into the night about his plans to move to London soon, and where he would like to live. Jonathan looked closely to the Count. He was very pale and has a long nose with red eyes. His lips were thin and very red, and inside his mouth he had long pointed teeth. His hands were thin with long fingers and nails. Both sides of his hands had hair on them. All the time he was listening and looking at the Count. Jonathan could hear the wolves outside. He looked towards the window. The Count moved closer to Jonathan's chair. He smelled like death. His face was very close to Jonathan's. He smiled and said, "My children are excited tonight. We don't have visitors here very often." "It is almost morning," he said, moving towards the door. "I am sure you are tired from traveling, and I have talked too much. I will let you get some sleep now." Jonathan was tired and slept till early afternoon. He found his breakfast waiting for him when he went to the dining room, but no sign of the Count. So he took a walk around the castle. Most of the doors were locked, but he did find a large library that was open. Inside, he was surprised to find many of the books were in English. There were also English newspapers on the desk. Late in the afternoon, the Count appeared. "So happy you found the library and how to occupy your time," he said. "I am trying to improve my English since I plan to move to London. I have only learned from these books, so it is a pleasure to finally have the chance to practice and learn better. So, can we talk about our business now?" He continued to talk after we sat down at one of the library tables. "I would like to hear everything you can tell me about the place you have purchased for me in London. I am sure I will need to sign some papers now." Well, I began taking a deep breath. "The house is called Carfax. It's located in North London, and it is a bit remote. It is mostly tree-covered, so it is dark. There aren't many windows in the house, but it is big and very old with character. Someone could possibly be lonely at Carfax. There is only one neighbor, and he is a doctor. He works at the hospital close by for mad people. Well, darkness doesn't bother me. I'm an old man and never feel it. I also love old houses. My family has been around a very long time, so I have always lived in a house with history and character," he said. He signed his name to the papers and left the room. Jonathan also got up and walked to the dining room, where dinner was already prepared and on the table. The Count did not eat again, saying he had eaten outside already. Days passed after that night, and Jonathan spent most of his time reading in the library. Each night was almost the same. Then one day, Jonathan noticed something very unusual. He was shaving, standing next to the window in his room. He brought a little mirror to use while he was there and needed it because there wasn't one in his room. He heard a quiet voice suddenly in his ear. "Good morning." Jonathan wasn't prepared and jumped with fear. He cut his neck a little with the razor. Someone was behind him, but when Jonathan looked in the mirror, he only saw himself. Blood began to run a bit down his neck. "Why can't I see the person talking in the mirror?" he thought. He looked again and then turned around. Count Dracula stood there with a strange look on his face. He was looking hard at the blood on Jonathan's neck. His eyes were red, and he had a hungry look on his face. Suddenly, he began to shake, and his eyes began to shine red. He picked up the mirror and threw it out the window. After a short time, Jonathan heard it hit the rock. The rock below and broke. "I never allow mirrors in my house," the Count said angrily. Then he changed and his face softened. "I see you cut yourself," he said quietly, looking at the blood again. "Try to be more careful." Jonathan knew then he wanted to leave. He looked out the window. He could see the broken glass below. He was now afraid. Could the Count ever let him leave? "Am I a guest or a prisoner?"